This is the largest player's handbook the game has ever had. It has been rebuilt from the ground up. It is filled with new options as well as returning options that have been refined, reimagined, rebalanced, and the whole book has also been restructured to aid reference at the table, to make it easier than ever before to create a character. And we have also packed it with enough new options that even people who have been playing this game for a decade will find whole new ways to customize their characters, between the different class features, the subclass options, the new feats, the new equipment options, the new crafting rules, the new spells, the revised spells. You combine all of that, and this is like having the game that you were already playing completely glowed up. It's just top to bottom has been improved.
It's been very distracting for me because I should be doing my work and doing research, but I'm mostly looking at different character builds now, using weapon mastery or how sneak attack works, because there's a lot of systems in this, but it's very simple at the same time. It has a momentum as you're reading it and an excitement.
And that really gets at one of our core goals, which was streamline as much as possible while also trying to make it easier than ever before to engage with the game, while also making it deeper, giving you more ways to imagine your character, more tactical options. We especially focused when it comes to tactical options on making the weapon experience more rich. So if you're playing a weapon-focused character, you are going to have a level of tactical excitement that your character never had before. You're going to find ways of, from level to level, evolving how your character plays, because just shifting from using the mastery option of one weapon to using the mastery option of another is going to sometimes subtly change how the game plays for you, and then other times not so subtly. It will be a dramatic shift. Now, people who focus more on the magic end of the spectrum are also going to find, when they dive into this massive spell chapter, over 100 pages long, close to 400 spells, many revised, a number brand new, some returning from books like Xanathar's Guide and Tasha's Cauldron, but even those reimagined. But also they're going to have non-combat options that they didn't have before, ways to enrich their social interaction scenes, their exploration scenes in ways that they couldn't before. And then we did the same with our weapon-focused characters. Again, something that people got to see as a part of the Unearthed Arcana process, that we made sure that classes that before, like say the Barbarian, that were primarily combat-focused, now have ways to contribute outside combat. There was no corner of the game that we did not zero in on as we built this new player's handbook, and as we build the new Dungeon Master's Guide and the new Monster Manual. Every part of the game, whether it relates to the combat pillar, the exploration pillar, or the social interaction pillar, has gotten a fresh coat of paint with new ways to play, and in some cases, surprises that people didn't even get to see as a part of the Unearthed Arcana process. Great example of that in the player's handbook are the brand new crafting rules.
There were always moments in the last 10 years of playing the game that you sometimes would find a moment, I wish I could do this, or I could wish there was a rule for that. Well, now there is. If I wanted to use my sneak attack to knock out a target rather than kill them, that's there now. As a barbarian, if I want to feel like I'm channeling something primal in myself and maybe use my strength score to actually inform perception or stealth, there's a moment where you can do that. And that's why I'm so obsessed with making new combos. What's the most exciting thing for you, Chris?
It's hard to nail down. There's a lot of things. I love how information has been reorganized in the book so I can find things easier. The rules glossary, I think, is going to be a huge boon to a lot of players, having a centralized place where all the rules are very clearly and concisely defined. But on a more selfish level, I am delighted by the weapon mastery properties. Jeremy and I were in a game recently where I was playing a fighter, but we were playing basically 2014 characters. And having play tested the weapon mastery stuff for the better part of a year now, it was a bit of a shock to go back to a fighter that didn't have that. And I think a lot of players who like hitting things with weapons are going to be as delighted as I have been. I feel playing a fighter without it now rather naked and exposed.
But it is like a remarkable feeling. Like you have, it not only drives, like I'm swinging a sword, but I'm also doing this. Like maybe I'm using this weapon, maybe I'm knocking you back. Maybe I missed and I'm still grazing you and doing damage. And you're making now choices that make those weapons important. Like if you're using a scimitar, a dagger, if you're using a heavy crossbow, there's an advantage to it. It has a tactic to it. I can't imagine martial classes without this now.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things about this opportunity to revise the books is we can do more wish fulfillment. Because we're building on a system that is sound and tried and true and that people love. We can now take 10 years of feedback of, oh, I wish the game did this, or I wish this class did that, and deliver on those wishes.
It also means that with the core rules in the book, so, in addition to all the fun character options and whatnot, well, the rules themselves that run the game have also been enhanced, where we were able to take things that maybe have been house rules for people over the past 10 years and make them a core part of the game. Great example of this. Many people over the last 10 years have allowed people to drink potions as a bonus action, feeling it was way too punishing running the rules as they were written in 2014 to have to spend your entire action drinking a potion. Particularly scary if you're dying and you're drinking that healing potion. And so people are going to find that now healing potions take a bonus action to drink. And there are shifts like that.
There is cheering happening right now while this video is playing.
And there are shifts like that everywhere you look in the rules, that it will feel like the game you've been playing, but everywhere you look, enhanced.
As you are looking through the player's handbook, as you're making your character, there's such intentional design behind everything, every piece of art, the layout. I can flip through this book and in seconds know where I am.
All of those choices were very intentionally made. Often with our books, what we typically do, we will write and then we will sort of later in the process begin working with the book's art director to come up with how the book is going to look. In this case, the art directors, Emmy Tanji and Josh Herman, were a part of the conceptualization of the book from the very beginning.
The text and art has just completely gone hand in hand throughout this whole process. The art style hasn't changed because we still have a lot of amazing returning D&D artists come back to join us in this adventure. They have such a wonderful sense to bring in their own experiences and their own takes on our art orders. So we truly did do it with intention, but we can't take all the credit because it's also the partners we work with that take it, beyond into the next level.
There's a lot of stuff that went into the covers. We kind of wanted to approach them all up as a set. So working with Tyler Jacobson across all three was a really great experience because he had also done the covers before. So at least he had done the Player's Handbook and he had done the Dungeon Master's Guide in 2014. So we got a chance to kind of reapproach them with a different perspective and what we wanted to do and try to figure out what that was. And we definitely referenced second edition, and Easley Elmore, that sort of original D&D artwork. We wanted to kind of bring back some of that flavor, especially in the shape language and the colors and sort of just the compositions, and to kind of evoke a little bit of that classic fantasy vibe, right? So hopefully all three of the covers kind of give you a little bit of that.
And for the new Player's Handbook, the art we have here, these are some famous D&D heroes. Mm-hmm. And you've got the Gold Dragon, and you've got the Red Dragon below, and the most vicious-looking kobolds I've ever seen. Probably in D&D. Yeah. But there's it's a moment. It is a moment in time, and that's something we've talked about before with all the art that is in the new Player's Handbook. Is it always feels like almost like a photo.
Yes.
In a moment of an adventure, whether it's right before something happens or the apex of something happening. but feels like a day in the life
Yeah.
of an adventurer.
And that's intentional, right? We wanted to provide storytelling in all of these images. We wanted to give you, the players, the fans, an image, like you said, that is a snapshot in time, but ideally we try to focus that snapshot in time right before an event has happened or right after an event has happened. Like you said, the gold dragon and the red dragon and sort of this party in the middle and the kobolds coming from the side, and what is going to happen, who's going to win, right? You know, same thing if you look at like the monster manual, like very much in the thick of it, but right before the real action happens, right? Like almost like at the end of round 1 in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's the rest of the fight going to be? The person that gets picked up by the tentacle is your unlucky party member for sure. Probably happens to them every game all the time. And then on the DMG, you've got sort of we very much also reference previous editions with the cover of the door being opened. Right. So what does it look like inside of the door? What could that DM be prepping you for? What is that set case or that show piece that you're going to be facing? So with the DMG cover, you've got, you know, sort of your multiple casts of characters, all the way from your grunts down to your skeletons to Venger, sort of your campaign level villain, or Warduke and sort of like almost a henchman mini boss of a campaign, right? And then you've got a looming threat in the back. So something that has a lot to look at that you can pull a lot of storytelling out of, hopefully, was very intentional for all 3 of these.
There was so much planning that went ahead before these subclasses art, because there's 48 of them.
Yeah.
And Josh Herman and I, we just both worked on this giant matrix of like the characters. Okay, you know, like, are we covering our tieflings? Are we covering our halflings? You know, like, make sure that we just have a wide variety of characters we want to show, because 48, that's pretty spectacular, you know. And then to also make sure they complemented the classes as well. So some that leaned into the tropes, and others that kind of were a nice, unique new spin. An example of how I hope this art will inspire others is that I've never wanted to really play a spellcaster. I'm like, it's too hard. It's just so much you have to manage, and I'm sure it's not. But then I saw some of the warlocks, like, holy moly, you know, like the wizards. I'm like, okay, I would absolutely jump into playing a character like that. And I'm hoping that's what this art will do to inspire some of our players.
We mapped out not only the subjects we wanted portrayed in the art, but the style of the art in each chapter. And so that's why when you look at the character creation chapter, there's line art, because we wanted you to have this sense of when you're making a character, you're like almost writing with pencil. And many of us, when we're making a character, will change our minds a bunch of times, you know, whether we're making the character on D&D Beyond or you know, typing it on our laptop or writing it with paper and pencil. We'll think, we'll change, we'll go back. And so we wanted the art itself to subtly point at that process, which is why in that chapter you have the line art. But then when you get to your class chapter, where you're making the most important choice for your character's class, you are just dazzled by full-page pieces of art for every class, by key pieces of art for every single subclass. Then it keeps going in terms of the beauty when you then get to the character origins chapter and you see the different backgrounds available to your character.
And they're literally backgrounds.
They're literally backgrounds.
I love that the most, because you're not interjecting a character to describe hey, this is what Charlatan looks like. You're just giving, like, this is the green screen background that your character will be inserted into.
Yes.
Right?
But also, more than that, the backgrounds themselves have all been redesigned, and the entire background system has been reimagined as one half of your character's origin, the other half being your character's species, and the two together interlock to give you a view of who your character was before they became an adventurer.
And it's very intentional, because you get a feat based off your background and skills on top of that, and that free feat really informs, like, well, of course I would have this feat starting off because this is the background I come from. That makes perfect sense. I just like how that's tied together, and that also informs the ability scores.
Yes, and I know we'll be digging deeper into character origins in one of our other videos, but one of the major changes for backgrounds is exactly that they now give you an ability score bonus, or rather set of bonuses. And this is actually going to be new even for people who were part of the Unearthed Arcana process, because in the final version of the backgrounds, each background now lists 3 ability scores. And if you select that background, you then choose how you want to distribute your bonus there. So you can either have +2 in one of them and +1 in another, or you can have +1 in all 3 of them. And so you have a tremendous amount of flexibility to pair different backgrounds with different classes, because what we wanted to do is make it so that the backgrounds were as flexible as possible to support as many different character concepts as possible.
How have you meddled with the player's handbook? I don't think, what's a nicer way to say it? I was like, what'd you do on the player's handbook?
Well, let's see. Jeremy and I were in the room hashing out the outline for the book. With our good friend and former boss Ray Winninger early on. So I had a hand in sort of sculpting the shape of the book, with Jeremy leading that work, of course. And then I injected myself at various points everywhere I could, creating new spells for the spells chapter, rewriting text from the 2014 book to make it suitable for the 2024 revision.
All 3 of the books we mapped out, Chris, Ray, and I, we mapped out together. And what people are going to see when all 3 books are out is that intentionality that you talked about, Todd, that we not only carefully plotted out the player's handbook that you've now seen, but also very carefully plotted out the Dungeon Master's Guide, and very carefully plotted out the Monster Manual, and plotted out how the 3 books integrate with each other. And so in many ways, we view the 3 books as one massive book that's simply too big to publish as a single volume, because it would be about 1,000 pages long.
And that speaks again to the intention of design on all of this. It is remarkable to see how these are all interconnected. I mean, this is an amazing day, because this is the first day you can pre-order all 3 books. What I've seen of the DMG is so much friendlier to a new dungeon master, and what I've heard is so exciting, and everything I've heard about the Monster Manual. And it does feel like this is one cohesive project in a way that we haven't seen before.
It's so cohesive that there is essentially a piece of the Monster Manual in the player's handbook.
Right.
We were able to coordinate the work in a way that we had never done before, where that was essentially Monster Manual work we were doing as a part of our player's handbook work, building the creature appendix that is in this player's handbook. The new creature appendix is even bigger than the one that was in the 2014 PH. The creatures have been carefully selected to be in the player's handbook. So, great example of this intentionality. Now, when you go to the equipment chapter and you see a list of available mounts, well, every one of those mounts now has a stat block in the same book. And similarly, when it comes to your familiar options, if you cast Find Familiar, or if you're a warlock with your enhanced familiar options, all those options are present. We also made sure that druids had a really good starting selection of creatures that they could transform into using wild shape. Now, our friends who use the Circle of the Moon subclass, they're still going to need to visit the Monster Manual eventually when they get high enough level, because we simply did not have enough pages in the player's handbook to have all the beasts that Circle of the Moon Druid might want available. But even for them, we have a nice selection of beast options so that you can start playing with your main features in this book using the content that is all inside this very book.
Yeah, and because we have 10 years of feedback on the 2014 books, we also knew that we were going to be making some adjustments to our stat block format to make our stat blocks even easier to run and more fun to run. But that work is not confined only to the Monster Manual. Going back to the idea that this is a 1,000+ page book broken up into 3 pieces, that stat block revision work impacts all 3 books.
And you'll see that not only in the creature appendix, but also in the Ranger Beastmaster subclass, where that subclass has been completely redesigned, largely inspired by work we did in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but even going beyond what we did in Tasha's. The stat blocks for that Ranger's friends have been redesigned. All of the stat blocks that appear in the new summoning spells that are in the book have been redesigned, all with this view toward making our stat blocks easier to use, and also really getting under the hood of every stat block and making sure that the creature is delivering the goods when it comes to the damage it deals, its resilience, and also its fun.
You mentioned summoning spells, and again, like what I love about the new player's handbook is everything you need is in the new player's handbook. Like if you want to wild shape, if you want to summon a familiar, but the summoning spells have various options of the type of that creature that you want to use. So if it's an aberration, if it's undead, if it's a fiend, you're not just having to select this one type of stat block creature, you have a variety of options. So if you love summoning and you like to be tactical, it's just layers of options with one singular spell, and you have all the stats you need to just run it. You don't need to grab another book and go hunt something down. It's all in the player's handbook.
And that was something that people loved when we first introduced it in Tasha's Cauldron. And so we were excited to be able to take that approach to summoning and incorporate it into the game's core. But even people who are familiar with those spells in Tasha's will have some fun surprises because all of those spells have been enhanced for the player's handbook. And so they, like everything else, are glowed up. And we even have other parts of the book where options that maybe first appeared in Tasha's Cauldron now appear here and have been enhanced. Great example, the Soul Knife in the Rogue, the Psy Warrior in the Fighter, Aberrant Sorcery in the Sorcerer. I bring up
all my psionic boys.
Yes, all a part of our desire to bring more psionics into the core game.
Yeah.
This was actually something that we talked about doing over a decade ago in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and we frankly just didn't have time to do it over a decade ago. And so we thought, now we have the time. And I like to think of it as the great old one Warlock now having their friends show up, so we can you can now have your full your full psionic crew. Whereas before in 2014, the great old one Warlock was wondering where all their psionic buddies were, and they've now all shown up for the party.
The gray old one is nasty now.
In
gray
all
old
the
one
best
is new
ways.
and super nasty. It gets in your head literally. To have some nice advantages in combat.
Yes.
There are significant, lovely changes to so many of these subclasses that just amp them up to more what you wanted to do, more what the kind of core concept was. Again, the Feywild patron for the Warlock, you are just teleporting everywhere. You are just bouncing, and with every time you do use Misty Step, there's a new added-on effect. And it just feels like you've made a pact with a Fey creature. Like, it makes narrative sense. And it gets me excited for like the tactical things I can do with all these subclasses, because I feel like there might have been gaps before in the 2014 versions, and now those have been filled in for that wish fulfillment that we all have.
The Archfey Patron Warlock is a great example of a subclass that didn't just get tweaked. It's basically a new subclass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this book has 3 brand new subclasses that have never appeared in a D&D book before. We have the Circle of the Sea in the Druid, we have the College of Dance in the Bard, and the Path of the World Tree in the Barbarian. But again, just as the Archfey Patron Warlock has been so redesigned that it's essentially a new subclass, there are other subclasses like that as well. The Warrior of the Elements in the Monk has been so heavily reimagined, it's essentially a brand new subclass. The Beastmaster in the Ranger, essentially a brand new subclass. And when we do videos on individual classes, we can dig deeper in other subclasses like them that are essentially brand new. And then we have other subclasses that are going to feel very familiar to people while at the same time having brand new options inside them.
And again, remember that like Weapon Mastery has left no class that uses Weapon Mastery untouched. Like that has changed the game.
Yes.
If you're a paladin, if you're a ranger, a barbarian, a rogue, a fighter, the game is different now.
Absolutely. Every single class that is weapon focused, your play experience is going to be different now and more fun and more tactically interesting because of Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery is so juicy that through feats, we've also made it so that even if you're a member of a class who doesn't get it, you can take a feat to dip your toe into the Weapon Mastery pool. Just as we've always had a feat that allows non-spellcasters, the Magic Initiate feat, to get a little bit of that spellcasting flavor.
I feel like the feats have also focused more on that wish fulfillment of, there's like the Skulker feat, and that has changed, where you really feel like, okay, now I can like attack in combat and not necessarily reveal myself. There's new features that make you feel like this feat, how I feel it should play, is playing that way now.
And there are way more feats.
There are a lot of feats.
But this book has 75 feats in it.
Yeah.
And it includes not only a suite of feats that are for first level characters that they get through their backgrounds, but we also now have epic boon feats that unlock for you when you reach level 19. And then between those epic feats and your what are called origin feats that you get at first level, you have many of the feats that were available to you before in the 2014 Player's Handbook, along with a number of new feats, some of which have migrated into the Player's Handbook from Tasha's Cauldron, and then have been enhanced in a variety of ways. We also have some things in the game that previously existed inside class features. So a great example of this are the fighting styles.
Right.
That shared tech has now migrated out of the classes into the feat system. And in addition to that, now in that category, for example, in the fighting style category, there are also now more options than there were in 2014.
All of this was done in consultation with the community through Unearthed Arcana articles. Those articles helped inform us about how far could we go with the design. You know, how far was too far, how far was just right. And a lot of time and energy was spent by Jeremy and others poring over the information that the community was giving us, the feedback that they were giving us on the subclasses, on the feats. I think that there were times when we even, I think, pushed even farther than the fans really wanted to go, but they helped rein us in a little bit. What came out the other end, I think, is going to just surprise and delight people. And for people who have been invested in UA and paying very close attention to what's going on, they're still going to be surprised because some of the feedback they gave us led us down interesting, fun paths. And but they're also going to see, oh, these guys actually, they took the feedback that I gave them and they made it better. And this is going to so amp up my game.
And those shifts that we made based on the invaluable feedback that the community provided are really going to result in that surprise you're talking about, Chris. Like, for example, in the Unearthed Arcana process, we tried several different approaches to inspiration and how that rule works. Well, the version that's in the Player's Handbook never appeared in any of the Unearthed Arcana articles, but it was inspired by feedback that we received, because and it is now called heroic inspiration. Right. Rather than dealing with advantage, which is what inspiration did in 2014, we realized this rule needs to play better with the rest of the game. And the game is already chock full of ways to get advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the final version of it is now a reroll. So not advantage, but is a reroll that the player can apply to any roll, not just D20 rolls. Because what we realized is we also wanted you to be happy you have this, even when, let's say, you're rolling the amount of hit points you restore to somebody with a healing spell, or you're rolling damage, or the DM has you randomly roll a die for some mysterious reason, like DMs sometimes do. We want players to have this little ace in their pocket of, all right, I always know if I have heroic inspiration, if I roll really bad, no matter what the die roll is, I can use it and re-roll and hope I get something better.
And we're showing you as much art as we can, and layout and page design, and even then it's not the same as holding it, especially when it comes to like the alt covers as well. Yeah. There is a texture, there is a way the light hits the gold that you can't really describe.
Yeah, the alt covers were really fun as well. We went sort of intentionally the opposite direction in the alt covers. We wanted to do something that was quiet and reserved and really paid homage to these being books, right? To TRPG books, right? This is a place of people where they're gonna, you're gonna buy these at your friendly local game store. You're going in person to pick up a physical object. That sort of classic fairy tale style of a book kind of came to mind as an idea of this feels like it both pays homage, but also is like a nice update and similar but different than what we've done before. So, and also a very big contrast to the traditionals.
So for the Player's Handbook, we've got another iteration of the Gold Dragon.
We have a gold dragon on the cover, having some tea with some friends by Wiley Beckert is the artist there. And they just really nailed it, the kind of vibe that we were going for of, we want something cozy, we want something calm, we want something that calls back to sort of classic storytale illustrations. We want a relatively tight color palette here. But I guess the thing I'll say about the alt covers is you have to see them in person because the gold foil treatment that's on them, the sort of soft touch to the cover, them being on a foil cover as well. So when you move them around, the way that the light hits them, the gold framing has beautiful shine to it, but the actual cover itself has almost like a lenticular style of foil. So when you see them, they're really beautiful and they're really different. And what I hope for these covers is, these, and also intentional in the style of these, is that I hope that people hang on to these for a long time, and I hope they get a lot of wear and tear. And I hope that, 10 years from now, these sit on a bookshelf next to other well-loved and well-used books and feel right at home.
I'm also excited for people when they get the book in their hands to page through it from beginning to end. We're hoping people will even read the introduction. We made it super short,
it is short. Yeah.
So they'll read it. But the introduction does things like talk about the main components you need to play, which the Player's Handbook in the past has not done. It also, for anyone coming from the 2014 Player's Handbook, has a really critical sidebar that talks about what's new in the book. Also clarifies that this book, is basically when you activate it in your game, this book does replace the 2014 Player's Handbook. And I think it's important for people to understand that. So we don't have people sort of trying to mix and match pieces of the two Player's Handbooks, but you can absolutely use this Player's Handbook with the adventures you already have for 5th edition.
But you can play a character from this new Player's Handbook right next to a character using the 2014 Player's Handbook as well. That's still true.
Absolutely. We have designed the new Player's Handbook so that characters built with it can be played with characters built with the 2014 Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
Now, that is true for the character options themselves. When it comes to the sort of baseline rules, the combat rules, the definitions of the conditions and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you are playing a 2014 character with 2024 characters, we have designed things so that the 2024 rules are what should be used in that situation.
Yeah.
Because those rules can handle a 2014 character being present, but the 2014 version of the rules will grind in a few places with a 2024 character. Sometimes because of terms used in the 2024 character that only have definitions now in the 2024 rules, Whereas you, again, can take a 2014 character and play them in a 2024 game.
And that is to their advantage, like being able to drink a potion with a bonus action.
Exactly. So you're going to want even your 2014 character to be swimming in a 2024 pool because of the many improvements to the core rules.
Absolutely.
But then you'll go from that introduction into the first chapter, which teaches all the main rules of the game. Also sort of gets you used to referring to the rules glossary, because the book often, rather than going super deep on a particular rules topic, will give you the basics and then send you to the rules glossary for the nitty-gritty. Other times you'll get all of it in one place, depending on, is there a version of the rule that you can learn that's just part of it versus do you need to know all of it at once?
Yeah.
And that first chapter has longer examples of play than we've ever done in a player's handbook
And those
before.
are fantastic. It's like you even have like art of the players around the table, and this happens, and this is what you rolled, and this is how that affected the game.
Along with commentary that explains what it is that you're reading about in that example of play. When you get to the character creation chapter, you, in addition to seeing the fun line art, are going to be brought step by step through the character creation process in a way that we've never done before, with also a lot of handy sort of get started quick bits in the chapter. Here's an example. When it comes time for you to assign your ability scores, if you've ever struggled, whether you're a brand new D&D player or maybe you're a veteran player but you're playing a class you haven't played before and you've struggled with, well, how should I assign my ability scores? Particularly if you're using the standard array or point buy. Well, we now provide suggested ability score arrays for every class in the book so that you can get started playing quickly. If you really love optimizing your character, and when you choose your background, you're not just interested in its story implications, but you're really interested in how it's going to affect your ability scores. Well, knowing that there are players where that kind of optimization is important to them, the character creation chapter has a table that tells you, here are the backgrounds to choose if you are looking for backgrounds that bump these certain ability scores.
That's fantastic.
And we provide that kind of assistance throughout the chapter. It goes even further than making a character at first level. It also provides rules for making a character at higher levels. We really want people to embrace this idea we've talked about throughout 5th edition, that if you're playing with a group of experienced players and you want your brand new party to hit the ground running as a group of adventurers, we encourage you to start at 3rd level, not 1st. 3rd level is when every class now gets their subclass and all of their main class abilities. And to support starting at 3rd level, we have now the rules for starting at that level in the player's handbook, as well as at any other level. So if you want to start a character at 18th level because your DM wants you to dive right into epic play, the rules for that are in the player's handbook too. And then you go from there into classes, character origins, feats, equipment, and spells.
And also the species have been, there's a lot of new there as well. Like the Goliath, all I can say is the Dragonborn feel very Dragonborn now. The Goliath feels exceptionally Goliath now.
Just the fact that there are species here who were in the 2014
Yeah, the Goliath wasn't in there.
The Goliath wasn't there, the Aasimar wasn't there, and the Orc wasn't there. So all 3 of those species now join other options that were present in 2014, and all of them have been enhanced in various ways. The community got to see an earlier draft of those enhancements in the Unearthed Arcana process, but since our game development continues beyond then, you're going to see even more. Great example of this, the Orcs Adrenaline Rush. The last time people saw it recharged only on a long rest, but in the final version actually recharges on a short rest or a long rest. The Aasimar, for people who have not yet seen the new version, rather than choosing a celestial revelation that is sort of fixed for the rest of your character's life, you now get to choose that whenever you use that trait. And so again, there are fun new options everywhere in the book, species included.
Well, we're about at time, but we are going to have a series of these videos coming out every single day during the weekdays. We are going to be going over different features in the player's handbook. We're going to be going over every subclass, every class, rules glossary, spells. I hope everyone doesn't get sick of me because we're going to talk about this every single day. I'm very excited that all 3 of these books are up for pre-order and that you can also pre-order the player's handbook separately. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for letting me interview you for so many years and put up with my fanboyness. But I'm so excited for these books. You've done an amazing job, and I hope you get a chance to actually enjoy any time. I know you're still working on the monster manual right now and the DMG.
Yeah, we're still in the thick of it, but again, we were just playing D&D this past weekend, and in our hearts, we're D&D fans first, and to me it is a wonderful sign that what I kept thinking was, I as a fan cannot wait to have these books in my hands because I want to simply be playing.
The new Player's Handbook is available for pre-order right now on D&D Beyond. You can find that link in the video description. And you can also find the new Core Rulebooks bundle for pre-order, both physical and digital. Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the new Player's Handbook and all the new Core Rulebooks, the new Monster Manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check out all of that content, and thank you for watching.